Let's get some reaction from the Mayor of Sarnia, Mike Bradley, who's been watching all of this very closely. And hopefully, Mayor, nice to see you this morning.
Thank you, Rosie.
You have been talking to Bill Blair, I think on a semi-regular basis as to how this is going to work. What do you think about the extension now till July 21st? Does that make sense to you?
Well, the Ontario border mayors have talked to Minister Blair a couple of times, and we've had good conversations, but we're getting very frustrated, just as our constituents are. I think the July extension does make sense. Ontario is still in the first stage of a three-stage plan to reopen, and I believe that we have to go through those three stages before we can reopen that border so that there's equality between Ontario and Michigan and Ontario and New York State. But we've got a lot of issues still to deal with. The one that does disappoint me is the vaccine passport. It's almost like it's a surprise to the government that they need to do something like that, because that's going to be critical to allowing people to move back and forth. And if I could add from the mayor's point of view in a border city, we don't want to see a Wild West opening, an Oklahoma land rush. We want to see it by groups, sectors, whatever you want to call it. We'd like to see the humanitarian issues dealt with, because there's some horrendous situations out there with people trying to link up with people on the other side. We'd like to see other groups come along steadily in a progressive plan. And that's the problem so far. All we get is leaks of information. We want to see a clear plan and a crisp plan that's understandable to Canadians.
And I should tell people that we are expecting something tomorrow. Bill Blair has said that there'll be some information, particularly for people who have 2 doses of vaccine tomorrow. There's a few things there that I want to peel apart. First of all, the vaccine, I don't think they're even calling it vaccine passports, vaccine certification. The government says they're going to do that first through the Arrive app, which people have been using for travel anyway, and then there'll be a second phase. What is your concern there? That it is not enough, that it should have been ready sooner? What is your concern there, Mayor?
Ready sooner. The second phase looks like it's out months and months away from now. And we don't know what other countries are going to accept. And that's going to be one of the issues. We've already seen a bit of a scuffle over that last week with not getting into certain shows in New York if you didn't have the right vaccine. Again, it comes down to is the country needs to know. We've been kept in the dark over the last number of months about reopening the border. I'm sitting here in my office looking at Port Huron, Michigan. Surely at the border cities, we should know what the plan is. We can give good input and advice on how to do it properly.
Have you not been told then what's going to be announced tomorrow?
No.
No. So you also talked about sort of a phased reopening, which I think probably makes sense for a lot of people. Would you want to see double vaxxed Americans being allowed to come into your city, or what would be sort of your ideal for that?
Rosie, for months I've been of the view that if you have the 2 vaccine shots, whether you're on this side of the border or the other, we should try to facilitate that traffic. The wrinkle again is having Ontario totally open so that we're not competing with each other. So people that are double vaccinated here aren't rushing across the border to do the things they can't do in Ontario right now, things like haircuts and other things that they can't do. So it's just a coordination. And it does make it difficult in Ontario because the Premier's been very strong about not wanting the border reopened. I think we can bring together what the federal government's trying to do, which I think is probably going to be more to the end of July into August, and have a partial reopening on humanitarian cases and some of the other sectors. And at the same time, hopefully be out of the Ontario situation with the 3 stages so that we can have an agreement to reopen and it's unanimous.
So you're fine with the extension for now. And I have to say, the numbers in the United States in terms of vaccination are not great. I checked again this morning. In terms of the population being double vaccinated, it's just over 50%. Of course, more people have had COVID in that country, but that's a concern. And then the Delta variant too. How much do you think those factors have to play into the reopening plan?
Well, I think that's the wild card, obviously, that we have these plans at the provincial level, and then the feds are going to announce something tomorrow. But it could all go off the rails with the variant. I hope that doesn't happen. People are tired, people are cranky, they want to get back to our normal life. And I'm hoping with the double vaccination, that will be the ticket to do so.
What about hotel quarantines? The government has signaled that will come to an end. If that were to be the case, would that help facilitate movement, because you wouldn't have to at least do that part anymore?
Well, at the land borders, it wasn't a huge issue. But I will say from day one, that didn't work. It didn't work at airports. It just didn't work. And when you have a failed public policy, it comes back to haunt you when you're trying to sell other things as it relates to the border. And, again, as a border city mayor, just talk to us, give us input. We asked that the Mayor of Windsor be part of these discussions directly, and so far that hasn't happened. We understand our communities. We understand the frustration out there. We understand why people want to get united on both sides of the border. And all of us border mayors have dealt with horrendous situations where people are trying, you have relatives that are dying and they can't get around that 14-day rule. And I think the government needs to show some compassion now and start moving forward on that whole issue of humanitarian access to Canada.
So what is the most important thing then that you want to hear from Bill Blair later in this show or tomorrow when they make these more formal announcements?
Well, first of all, Minister Blair has been good to deal with. He's been straight up, and he's just not giving us the information we want at this point, which is the plan. Would like to hear that the quarantine period is gone or greatly diminished, so it's workable for people. Would like to hear they're going to start accepting humanitarian cases and students and moving forward, probably in July and August. That's what I'd like to hear, and I think most Canadians would. They just don't want this to open tomorrow because we are not ready.
Okay, Mayor Mike Bradley, always good to speak with you. Thanks for your perspective this morning, sir.